and a Kent, but there's only one Ken that is bright as a penny, right, Ken? You pick him out in a crowd, right? But let's bring our heads and hearts together because you want to walk out of here with something a little different, something a little more. You come to these Leadership Management Association meetings regularly, I know, and I hope each time you walk out with just something a little more. Now we're just going to wipe that out of our minds. Just wipe it out. All of those were to make some points. We're really not going to deal with any of those subject matters, but it was interesting to see you deal with them. But let me ask you a question.
3 fights broke out.
Yeah, I know. You know, you have to word these things very carefully. All right. And there's something else you had to do. What did you have to do mentally to not, suck them in the jaw when you thought they were really on the opposite side? What did you have to do mentally?
Put yourself in their place.
And kind of put yourself in their place. Put your opinions on the back burner. That's the hard part. Particularly when it's an issue that you have strong feelings about. So I think we miss the boat sometimes when we don't realize listening is difficult. But what I want to move you to is that listening is not always about, showstopper issues like maybe those were to you. But it is about, am I really hearing, in the quote sense, what's going on around me? Do I hear anything beyond myself? Because that ability to hear beyond yourself, I'm going to call other-centeredness. And great leaders, if you look at great leaders, they listen. They listen. Now, you may not agree with how they heard it, and you may need to give your 2 cents, but fortunately, we're in a place where you can do that. But the point is, watch this, and what I want you to do, and we're going to go through some things, is when you leave here, I want you to change something about how you listen at work. Now, I'm going to expand that to virtual as well. How much of your time is spent in virtual communication in a day? Give me a percentage overall. In virtual, email, 80%. So I'm just sort of verifying. That's what I thought. So it's less than 20% is face to face. Would that be about right? And we'll move to telephone. Let's look at the bottom of that page. Let's look at the bottom of that page for a moment. By the way, did anybody by chance change your mind when you heard the other side? Did anybody? There's one.
A suggestion you should have, separate the spouses when you do this.
I don't know, that sounds kind of delicious now that he's mentioned it.
You have to agree with all of
it. Point taken. I heard you. Do not want domestic problems from these exercises. Now let's dive in. What did we get? Look at the first thing. Your gift of being fully present gets the attention of the sender. Your gift of being fully present. How were you fully present? I forced you. What did I say? To be fully present, you had to what?
Listen.
And what did I tell you were going to have to do? Repeat it. So, and you can't always do that with everybody, but fully present. Now, if 80% of your communication is virtual, how do we do that? Now, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you another question. How much of the virtual is just audio versus video? 80%, same thing, is audio. You very seldom have video conferences? Okay. This makes it more difficult. But I've already thought this through because I kind of know a little bit about your environment. My brother-in-law worked for Lockheed in Fort Worth and retired from there, as a matter of fact. And I have another Lockheed story I'll tell you in a minute, but here's the clip. But you told me at lunch you went to Toastmasters, right? So it wasn't like you were chained to your desk, right? Okay. So do you do audio conferences where you are just listening to someone or several people, like you have the thing in the middle and everybody's listening? And what are you doing while that's going on? know you're not fully present? We know. We know. And we'll get to another, just a second. Go to the next one. Not speaking actually connects you. They feel you get them. When you were doing the little exercise, didn't you, when you were saying your opinion, kind of think they were getting it because they weren't saying anything? They were just listening? I mean, wasn't there a moment where you thought, I'll get my point across, right? They're listening. That's a good feeling. How do you feel when you know somebody's really listening to you? How do you feel when you realize after you've said what you've said, they didn't hear a word you said? So you get into these audio things. Okay, look at the third one. People can tell when you're not 100% fully present. The danger of multitasking. Third question. People can tell you are not 100% fully present. Danger of multitasking. Let me just share with you something about multitasking. You can't do it. Look up the science. Your brain to multitask has to do several tasks quickly in order. You wonder why you come home exhausted mentally. Who was it walked in here and it just looked like it was in a day? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Was it Edgar? I couldn't remember who it was. He just said, I'm just glad to be here and away from work. And I was like, I can see you've been multitasking. There is a price communication-wise. You want leadership? Quit multitasking when you should be listening. Oh, well, they won't know. Yes, we know by your answers. What are you missing? Because you're not doing it. And you're not doing your brain any favors. I told you, my brother-in-law worked for Lockheed. He got shingles 3 times. Why is that? What do you think stress does to you? I ought to get you up here now, right? For the health deal, Ellie, right? Because it doesn't work. So that's the first change you could make. I'll bet in the next 2 days. Is that when you get on, what would happen if you really let them know? I will tell you, you will have different responses. You will get more out of the meeting. Quit lying to yourself. Your brain won't even do that. And trust me, Google it. You know, if you don't, everything on the internet's true, right? Here's another thing you just experienced. A judging mind will talk in your head while you're trying to listen. That's what happens when you try to multitask and you try to not hear, but you're supposed to be present, but you've got these other things to do, and you know, judging mind. That part of your mind is very judgmental. Does judgmental lead to better relationships? See, let me ask a question. Is there anybody in here who knows everything there is to know about relationships? I really want to know. Oh, Dave knows.
No, I said my wife's not here.
Oh. Okay. If you don't have to put your mind on the back burner at least once in the next 7 days, you're not trying to do anything different. You know what that feels like now. Who are you talking to that you need to be able to feel that? You will know. Acknowledge, paraphrase, and ask questions to keep in listening mode. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You will have to concentrate to avoid giving opinions or advice. Concentrate means singular focus. Your opinion's on the back burner. You're trying to get a contract out. You're trying to do your piece. You're trying to understand their piece. Then do it fully present. General Welsh gave an address to the Air Force Cadet Academy. And I was very interested as he gave it. He brought up some listening things. He was talking about that he had he'd been at this new site overseas someplace about 6 months. And he saw this one airman probably 2 or 3 times a week and talked to him. Hello, how are you? How's the job going? Like you do. You know, hello, how are you? How's the job going? You know, or nothing. You know, I love it when you walk like this with your phone in front of you. That's real communicative. But we're really fighting that battle. But he said, then he got a new airman or something that was a supervisor, flight chief. And he'd been there 4 days. And the flight chief came in and said, General Welsh, you got to do something about this guy. Brought in this guy. He had his shirt off. He had nipple rings. And Welsh was like, nipple rings? Oh my gosh, he's got his shirt off. This is horrible. He totally missed what the real problem was. Finally, when he listened, put all that aside, this young man had divorced his wife. She was on drugs. They divorced. They had a 4-year-old. As it happened, she then later got arrested for drugs, and he was going to lose custody of her because they'd given her sole custody because he didn't tell the judge about her drugs. Well, what was going to happen is if he couldn't get back to the States, the child would be put in foster care. What do you think General Welsh did? He moved mountains, and he got that boy back, and that 4-year-old had his daddy. And then he said, but the really important thing is, why didn't I know that? I've been there 6 months. How long have you worked with these people? And what do you know about each other? What do you know? What do you really know that's important? I'm not saying the job isn't important, but before that is the person, okay? And he said, the reason I didn't know is because I didn't ask. I didn't take time to ask about anything but the job. And by the way, I told you on the other sheet, when you look at it, you can go to YouTube and Google that and hear the whole thing. It's really quite moving. Go to the page now, right across from value of tuning and listening, where it says personal, not positional. Leadership, and this piece of leadership is very personal, not positional. Anybody can lead. Anybody can listen. And you can listen up and you can listen down. You can change it. It's an impartation, not an imitation. Leadership can never be divorced from the individual. You cannot impart what you do not possess. So if you're complaining about who doesn't listen to you, or we don't have a good relationship, who's a part of that? You. What happens if you change that? Well, they won't do. You don't know till you try. I'm getting to the hard part here, that's why I'm building up. The main thing that comes through us is not the work we do, but the relationship we maintain and the atmosphere produced by that relationship. And I'll tell you, when I walk into companies, I feel it. I can tell you in a short amount of time, whether it's a school or an office, I can tell you what the atmosphere is. Notice small moments versus showstopper moments. It's a developmental process. The showstopper moments we all hear. Pearl Harbor, 9/11, Columbine shooting, Parkland shooting. But on an individual basis, how do we hear it? I was quite interested in hearing the president's listening session after Parkland, mainly because we got it all. We didn't just get it from news reports. We really saw it as it happened. And I was very impressed. There were 2 people there that took 2 different views of it, which I think is very positive. One of them was Andrew Pollock. You may have heard his quote. He says, I'm very angry that this happened because it keeps happening. 9/11 happened once and they fixed everything. How many children have to get shot? It should have been one school shooting. We should have fixed it. And I'm pissed because my daughter, I'm not going to see again. King David Cemetery, that's where I go to see my child now. And I was like, wow, he really put in a real, wow, that was very powerful. And then Daryl Scott was there. Now, Daryl Scott's daughter, Rachel, was one of the ones shot at Columbine. He made the point, he said, the long-term solution, there are some short-term things. And by the way, Andrew Pollock went to the legislature, has already gotten a bill passed. I think they're saying it's non-constitutional. But that was one way to do it. Daryl Scott said it's long-term, developmental. He said it's about connectedness. And he does a program called Rachel's Challenge in various high schools. And it teaches the kids to be connected to one another, to see one another, to talk to one another. My program is the same thing, only it's not just for one assembly. It's for every mentors to come in twice a month and mentor kids into what relationships goes on. There is nothing more important long-term than leadership and teaching kids how to listen, for example. How to really hear beyond anger. How to understand what people say isn't nearly as much about you as it is about them. Most interesting. I pulled into the parking lot in Aledo. Y'all were talking about Aledo, and I work with them a lot. And I pulled in the parking lot, came out, and noticed my right fender had been scratched. But on my window shield was a little note that said, to whom it may concern, I have hit your car. I didn't mean to. Call me, and I will make this right. Would you do that? Would I do that? What did I? So he paid for it. It ended up being 3 days of rental car on top of it, but it only cost 2, so I gave him back the refund for the day that I didn't have to use. And he said, oh, you didn't have to do that. And I thought to myself, yeah, I did. See, it's reciprocal. And it's that old thing, how we treat each other is how we get treated. And this listening piece is not small. When someone isn't listening to you, maybe they're a reflection of how they think you'll listen to them. Oh my gosh, that's a hard thought, isn't it? What are they really saying? When do I ask a question? I'll never forget questions, and we were talking about General Welsh asking a question. Finally, questions are better than any answer. Rather than spout back an answer, what if you're really thinking and you're really engaged and you're really tuned in and you think of a question? I can remember when I was in the meat company, we were going into Louisiana to take our products, right? And this guy was just, oh, we don't need it, you can't possibly do to the specs we want, blah, blah, blah. And finally I just said, okay, what are your specs? What would be perfect to you? That is a great question. Anytime you do a what if and just stop. And so he told us what he wanted. And when he finished, I said, well, actually, that's what we're offering. Wouldn't it be worth the trial? He was dumbfounded. He took the meat. I mean, they take the meat. It's a good thing. We don't ask the question because we're too busy justifying what we were really already thinking, or while you were talking, or while you were speaking in the audio thing, or while you were emailing, I was already coming up with my comeback. I want to be sure I say the right thing. By the way, when we get to email, go slow. Reread the email first. Didn't you just tell me that when you looked at the question from another perspective, you realized you really agreed? Oh, my stars. Do you think that has to do with email? What emails do you ignore because you just really don't know what to say? And this person is out there going, well, there's ignoring me. Well, that doesn't help the relationship. Even if you don't know the answer, sometimes when I don't know the answer or I can't get to it right then, I'll email back and I say, I got your request. I'm working on it now, but I've got a couple other things ahead of me. I'll get back to it at my earliest convenience. You would be amazed what you can do virtually to build relationships. Another thing you can do on email is, do you do anything to ask a question about their person? Well, I don't know. They don't know anything about me. I'll never meet them. I don't know them. Oh, come on. All you have to say is something about yourself. Be vulnerable and say, this came right in the middle of my daughter's high school graduation. What a hoopla. I'd forgotten how much fun it was. But anyway, here's your... So what if you opened the door for them in their response? Something about them. How hard is that? Well, we just do it. We don't have time. Relationship is about time. That's really all it's about. And the right questions. And do you call people by their right name? I was doing a management seminar in I don't know where it was, Indiana, I think. And this guy, we were talking about this in a full day, 2-day deal, so we kind of dug in. And he said, everybody calls me by the wrong name. And I said, what do you mean? Because I had given the example when we moved to Omaha, Nebraska from Oklahoma. Oh my gosh, when I was a freshman in high school. We went to the church there and introduced ourselves. There's Robert, Sandra, and Mary Dale Shelton. The guy turned around and he says, I'd like for y'all to meet Bob, Sandy, and Mary Shelton. And I was like, I'm not going to like this place. This guy, he was sitting about where you are, guy, and he just kind of had this look on his face, kind of like you have. And, that outer space look. And I said, I just said, what? And he said, my name is William, but the only place I don't get called my name is at work, and you call me Bill. The whole room was just, because they all knew each other, the whole room was just silent. And I said, I'd like for you to meet William so-and-so, and everybody came up and shook his hand and called him William. What a simple thing. What a simple thing. Ask the right question. Call me by the right name. Notice mind, heart, lips. Tweets, emails, likes, connection. It comes from your mind, which comes from your heart, and it comes out your lips. Be sure what your lips are saying is because your mind was cleared and you were fully present. My favorite is Ronald Reagan and Sam Donaldson years ago. Sam Donaldson had said something derogatory about Reagan, I don't know, and they brought it up in some conference, and Reagan's standing there and somebody said, what do you think about Donaldson saying you were blah, blah, blah? And Reagan just looked at him and said, oh, that's just Sam, and went right on. Everything isn't a battlefield. Everything doesn't require a retort. The silence may mean we don't have to go there. My, oh my. Will Rogers had a saying he was known for. Do you know what it is? What is it?
I never met a man I didn't like.
That's right. Gets a prize. I never met a man I didn't like. And I think he didn't. If you read his life, there was something he could like about everybody. I haven't reached that point of nirvana yet, but I'm growing. I'm growing. We just had unlimited listening focus. You know the story. General Welsh now knows the story. And what's your story? We've just had two very prominent people leave us. The first was Billy Graham, and the second was Barbara Bush. And I thought about it. I thought, when you think of Billy Graham, you think salvation. That is what came out of his lips. That was what is in mind. That was his heart. With Barbara Bush, you think family, faith, and friends. In fact, she said at her Chelsea address, cherish your human connections. Well, you got to have them to cherish them. Somebody needs you to really say, I heard you in a way they can really hear. And I want you to pick a partner, perhaps the A-B partner that you just had, or another, not your spouse. I think I learned that one. And I want you to do something over the next 7 days. So come up real quickly with a partner. Just pick a partner, either the person you just talked to or somebody you're sitting at the table with, and raise your hand when you've got your partner. How are we doing on time, Jan? 38. Good. Okay. You've got a partner. Now look at the bottom of that handout. Do you see under, it's 7 days from now, you and your partner will have a phone conversation at the very least. Do not email. Preferably lunch or a cup of coffee. Now come on, you can meet over the microwave while you heat your lunch, Michelle, right? If nothing else. She would say, well, I heat up my lunch. And here's some conversation starters. Now, 7 days from now will be what day? What's today? 19th? Next Thursday, right? So next Thursday, I'm going to know. I will know these things. You're going to have a conversation. Look at some of the starters. What have you noticed since our meeting last Thursday? Has anyone noticed something different at home or at work? Listen, how does anybody know you were here this evening? Not because you said you were here, but when you go back, something, just the smallest thing is different. You actually listen to your teenager and say, I didn't know you were blah, 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 blah. Well, Dad, I told you a million times, or Mom, I told you a million times. Something will be different. You say, well, it won't help at work. Listen to the person at work who you think does not hear you. Listen differently. Just with some examples I gave a minute ago. Listen differently. And you'll say, well, that won't make any difference. If you don't try, it sure won't. And consistency is a big part of leadership, isn't it? Make this a consistent, you don't have to go out and strip naked and run up and down the hall and say, I'm listening to you. You just have to put, well, you could, that might get you. Try to put your mind, look at those value listening propositions. Listen the way you learned to listen in that 4-minute scenario. You learned a great deal there. Use it. Put your mind, you've got a gnarly problem at work, and it may be a personality problem. Put your mind on the back burner and hear differently. Say something. Ask a pointed question. You know, they talk about Bubba getting shingles. Have you ever heard this one about Bubba getting shingles? Since I mentioned, I've had shingles 3 times too. So Mike was not ahead of me. But it's a stress deal. I mean, it just is. And so Bubba goes into the doctor's office and he says, the front desk says, well, you know, what's your problem? I have shingles. Oh, okay. Well, sit down and have a seat. Then A comes in and she says, what's your problem? Shingles. So she says, okay, well, let's take your blood pressure, you know, and all the stuff they do, and we got that. So then a nurse comes in, they put him in a room, and then a nurse comes in and she says, well, what's your problem? And he says, well, shingles. So she gives him a blood test. She takes an electrocardiogram. I mean, the whole works. So finally, and she says, now take off your clothes and the doctor will be here in a minute. So there Bubba's sitting naked. That's what reminded me of it when I said naked. Naked on the table, and the doctor walks in. And the doctor says, where are your shingles? There's the question. And Bubba said, well, out in my truck. Where do you want them? Somebody is waiting for you to ask the right question. I'm telling you. So, one of the ancillary things I did one time is I have a concept called Strength Bank that I won't go into, but I use it with my high schoolers, and I did a series of radio shots on KWRD. This was 10 years ago. And they were just little minute spots, and I'm calling them now listening minutes. I'm going to read them to you, and to kind of wrap up listening. Try something new. Get your partner's name, agree how you're going to meet, and don't cheat. Don't do email. Please don't do email. The very least, get on the phone. You have hundreds of conversations every day. Each one reveals your heart. That is, your communication and relationship to life. Consider your pay at a gas station. The attendant says, hello. You stand in distracted silence. The total charge is $22.45. You nod. Sign here, please. You grab the receipt and exit. You didn't listen. What did your lack of conversation say to the attendant? You don't matter as a human being in my world. This, for me, is not a significant moment. I'm saving my repartee for the job where it matters. Listen, if you treat a gas station attendant this way, someone at the office is getting the same detachment from you. Every conversation, every single one, builds up or tears down a relationship every single time. And you know, when you have great relationships, you have a lot of humor. Humor just comes with it. So this is on a listening moment for sense of humor. How do you know you are a good and ever-improving listener? Easy. What are the fruits of your life with others? Love, peace, joy, or irritation, unrest, and unhappiness. My dad put it this way. If you will keep your sense of humor, you can get through most anything. Canceled flights in the middle of a business trip, for example, aren't initially funny, but the telling of them later is. The trick to keeping a sense of humor in tough circumstances has been, for me, think about the great story and what fun I will have telling it with flourishes of detail and tons of puns. Of course, if you, in my place, are already frustrated with your job and the stupid airport, well, adding a canceled flight will probably send you over the edge. But if I'm watching you go over the edge, I will see the humor in it. Sorry, you had your chance. There is a lot of humor when you're working with people, even if it is audio conference. If you're fully attentive and you can add something. Everybody likes a break in levity. You can do this. Just some small something. Practice over the next 7 days, and I will know that you have something good to say, and you have grown one step further. And there are more steps, but this one's an important one. Thank you very much.